I think it's a great technology. I think it's going to change the world. And I wanted to get in early to do that. Quantum has the possibility of creating a digital divide of the people that know the technology and the ones that don't. My goal was, how do I make this accessible and easy for anybody to get in and get involved? Like, I don't know exactly how my iPhone and all the circuits work in my iPhone, but I know how to get value out of my iPhone and get what I need. And so that's what I'm trying to convey. And so if we can use this technology to simulate that chemical reaction and lessen the need for that technology to be able to do that, that could have a significant impact not only on energy, on waste, but also on food production. I think there's a lot of similarities. I think the next Googles of the world, the next Amazons of the world, the next, eBay, all these companies we don't know about, and they're going to come out of the ashes of some of these technologies.
Welcome to a new episode of the Quantum Economy Podcast. My guest today is Steve Suarez, CEO of HorizonX and former global head of innovation at HSBC. Steve is a quantum veteran and a leading strategist, and with his quantum index, he measures and showcases which companies are making true progress in quantum technologies. Fun fact, we get into that actually German corporates are leading many of the disciplines. We also talk about Steve's passion for education, his program at MIT, and how he sees the challenge of tackling the rising skill gap. This is the Quantum Economy Podcast with Steve Suarez.
So we're known each other for quite a while, Steve, and I was looking forward to getting I would say an industry veteran and someone that has worked on many projects and in consulting and funding and setting up everything. So just give me a little bit of like a short intro where you're at today. There are so many things going on. I just want to get that set up where your focus is at the moment.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Anders. And I really like your podcast and I like what you're doing. I've been following all your different episodes and very honored to be here on your podcast. I've been doing a lot in quantum. I fell in love with quantum many years ago. I was at HSBC and kicked off that quantum program at the bank. They're doing some amazing stuff. About 2 years ago, though, I left HSBC and I have been doing a combination of things. I started a company called HorizonX, and what we do is strategy consulting around innovation, AI, quantum computing. And what I want to do is leverage the skill sets that I gained at the bank to help boards understand this technology, help them understand how do you invest in this technology, help executives find out how do I leverage this technology for good and what I can do within my organization. Also have people understand the threats of this technology and how to respond to those threats, and then get into execution. So help them partner up with the right hardware partners, the right software partners, so that they can leverage quantum. So I think it's a great technology. I think it's going to change the world. And I wanted to get in early to do that. So yes, I'm doing that, but I also have a combination of things, but I'm sure we'll get into that as we talk.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the thing that I was very curious about is you came over and told me, I think it was a year or even 2 years ago, that you were setting up a quantum index to measure the readiness and to get an overview of the industry. And I was very curious about that because, what can an index in an economic sense to that reveal that is not found in the sciences or in the media in general? So maybe you can talk a little bit about how the quantum index came to be and how you guys approach it and what you actually measure.
Yeah, you know what? There was a lot of people that came to me and asked me, who else is working on this? What are real use cases? What are real companies doing? And so I would go very manually, one-on-one, kind of telling them, oh, this company is doing this and that company is doing that. And then it came to me that it would be great to put up a website that had that information out there. And what we could do is do it by industry, so that we can see how every industry is doing within this We started with automotive because it was pretty easy. And, I got different feedbacks when I launched that. I mean, I know um, I gather public information and I use that public information to put it out there. And some companies, since I put out the information, have moved. Some have maybe shrunk their quantum teams, others have grown. So what we do is at a point in time, we use research papers as a point of, how many research papers have they created? Are those research papers cited? So if it's cited, we give them more points. Obviously, it's being leveraged by others. It's being seen as value. They get more points in our matrix. We look at things like patents, and patents is a good way to see how organizations are taking things serious, how many patents they're creating. Workforce, obviously, it shows how much investment they're making into quantum and how much big of a bet that they're making. Collaborations, things that are in public. I can't take anything that's private, right? Because then it's not fair to everybody. And then what POCs are they doing? And what they're writing. So I did this in collaboration with the Quantum Index, with the Quantum Insider, and leveraged a lot of their information. So we're really excited about being able to put information out there, but this is going to change. And so whoever's at the top of the list today in the next iteration, I guarantee will change. I'm already starting to see things change and we'll be going through it. So Anders, we've got automotive, we've got life sciences, we got financial services, and just recently we released energy. And I know next week, well, depending on when you broadcast this, there's going to be a lot of announcements from a lot of the big energy providers about making the list. So that was pretty exciting.
That's cool. Yeah, because I was looking at it and I was thinking, is this a reflection of the corporates, or is it as much the drivers from the software hardware side? So you are kind of persuaded to move to quantum through some sales dude from the hardware companies, and therefore you are kind of sort of forced into innovation and creation. How do you see that? Is it the corporates that drive? What are the factors for some of these players at the top of the list? Is it an internal, external? Is it very simply human based on one or two individuals? What are some key factors to make it up to the list on that type?
I think some companies, it's a mix. So to answer your question, it's a mix. Some companies are taking it serious and they're making investments and they're making really good bets, structuring a very structured. They have a strategy, and they want to see how they apply this. Others are volunteers and they're people that are interested in quantum physics, are hearing a lot about quantum. Quantum seems to me, getting more and more traction, and a lot of executives are paying more attention. And people that are in quantum or have a quantum background are starting to get together in organizations and say, "Hey, I think there's an opportunity here for us to see how can we apply this technology to our company." So it really depends on the company. I'm seeing a mix from some that are very structured, very disciplined. They have a head of quantum, actually the title, the head of quantum, to others that it's more of a volunteer and people, trying to experiment, but very lightly with very little money to get in. Now, you're at the top of the list now, but because there's not so many people in there, this list will be a lot more competitive as the years go by. So, this is just nascent, and I expect, there might be a whole bunch of companies that are not even on the list today that will rise up to the top.
I mean, you said you think you foresee a change. What exactly will you see that change? What is the change that you are seeing? And also maybe just elaborate a little bit about who gets it? Which companies do you see nailing it or really pushing for this change?
Well, I tell you, I'll if you look at the index, and anybody on this call can just pull up the website, you'll see some similarities and you'll see some interesting information. if you look at automotive and what country is number one in automotive, you look at life sciences and what country is at the top of life sciences, and you look at energy and you look at the company that is top in energy. Anders, do you know what they all have in common?
No, you tell me. I know Volkswagen has been up there, and we last time we spoke, I was quite surprised by that. So I would like to to hear that from the inside part of it, right?
Yeah. So what's similar is they're all German companies. So if you look at the top ones in automotive, you look at the top ones in
Oh, all the
life
categories
sciences.
are. No, I looked at life sciences, and I didn't see the. I didn't look at that common denominator. Yes, that's clear. Interesting. I'm just looking at it right now. Yes, I was the Volkswagen. You have Boehringer, of course. You have, but finance is J.P. Morgan number one, right?
Yeah, yeah. So if anything, the German banks need to kind of get up to speed with
So
the
that
rest of the industries.
I didn't see that, because in finance that was one of my follow-up questions, because I didn't see any banks from Germany. So I was
Yeah.
looking at, but for automotive, life science, and energy, all of them are German, right? Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I find that interesting because if you look at government spending and you look at the McKinsey report, right, around how much money Europe is spending on quantum compared to the US and other areas, they've got to come to the table more. But if you look at commercially, who are the people taking this technology serious? I would say the Germans are doing really well at getting in there, trying it out, and seeing how it goes.
Hmm. But why do you think the financial industries is so much different than that? There isn't one bank that is in Germany that
Yeah,
is. I mean, they're not
I think
large by numbers on the
there's
stock
there's a
market,
lot of people
but you
that
have some
tried
substantial
and
banks.
got in early and probably spent a lot of money, probably maybe too quickly, and now they're backtracking, right? Because I think maybe the wrong people came up and set the wrong expectations. The worst thing you can do is come in and say, look, I've got a business case for quantum and I'm going to give you an ROI right away. And then get all this money, waste a lot of money, and not really make any traction. And then what you're going to do is turn people off to say, oh yeah, we spent a lot of money on quantum and we never got any value from it. The thing now is making sure that, with the rising power, where things are going, is setting the right expectation. And that's why I really push about education. It's important that companies need to educate themselves right now, understand the different technologies, right? There's not just one quantum computer, and we're going to all see how we can use that computer. There are very different modalities, and a lot of companies don't understand that. They don't understand that there's many players trying to get to a fault-tolerant quantum computer. And then once you get there, what do I use it for? And a quantum computer will never replace classical computers. So, what are the specific use cases that you can use to get there? And so that's part of the work that I do. And when you want to get into it, it's kind of the course that we have at MIT to teach strategy and impact of quantum computing for executives.
I'm talking a bit about education afterwards, but I just want to get the whole essence of how this index is, and how it's going to become there. You talked about investments, patents, research, startup factor. How do you measure, or how do you choose the metrics and weigh them up against each other?
Well, and that's good because that's where I'm working a lot with Alex Challens and the Quantum Insider. They have a wealth of information within their platform, their intelligence platform, and we look at key drivers that we feel like will show not only money, how much money, but how much commitment these companies have. And by hiring people, by the size of their team, by the amount of work that's coming out, by the collaborations, we leverage that. Now, we have kind of a weighted average, and we put all this data into a very semi-complicated matrix where we plug in the numbers. We want to be very objective. This is not a pay for play or any of that. We want to go out there. And I could tell you after the fact, after I've published, companies have come to me and said, Steve, here are all these other research that we've done. But because that research is in public, I wasn't able to use that data. And so it's really meant to be like a view into the industry that we use, and we want to be as objective as possible. If you think about, in Davos, there's a company that does the best brands of the world, and they rank the best brands or the most innovative brands. And they have their own metrics and stuff like that. And Apple and, Coca-Cola, different brands come at the top. We want to do the same thing, but for commercializing quantum computing.
Mm. Yeah, that's nice. I mean, a lot of this information, if you would run it through an AI, you might imagine they would have a different weight of it, but you could grab it to that extent, right? But are there any findings that was unexpected? Any surprises when you started to look into this?
Yeah, there were some surprises. We were thinking that there would be some companies that would rise right to the top. There were some companies, I could tell you, in one of the lists, there was a company that wasn't even on the list. And I sent out an email to CEOs and people in that industry. And then this one company came back to me and said, "Hey, Steve, we've got all these patents. We've got all this research." And so out of 15 companies, they weren't even in the top 15. But when they sent that to me and I was able to find them, and because there was a naming convention,
Mhm.
they actually went to number one.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah.
Sure.
And I thought it was like, I didn't know anything they were doing, to like being incredibly impressed. And so I feel like I've got a good grasp of what's going on in the industry. Like yourself, we're at conferences, we hear what's going on, we're networking with people. Um, and then when I find these companies that are just doing amazing stuff and the type of work they're doing, yeah, I do find some of that to be amazing, and some of these companies to go to the top. Other companies, like in oil and gas, I expected a very big player to be in the top 15. And actually, the other competitors expected this one player, and that one name kept coming up over and over again. And that player didn't even make the top 15, because the only thing they're doing is investing in quantum. They're not doing anything else. And because investing in quantum doesn't really play a lot into my metrics, into our metrics, they didn't make the top 15. But I know for a fact that there's a lot of management people kind of questioning to want to talk, to understand how we put that together.
Nice. So what are these factors then? Do you also think about which of these actually are foundations for real progress and not just hype?
Yeah. I think POCs are really important, right? So we want companies that are using real data on real quantum computers to get real output. And I think, one of the latest conversations was the HSBC one with IBM on getting bond trading pricing accepted by 35%. Now, people will say, well, yeah, but this or that. This is how it starts. You start with experiment. Nothing's going to come out perfect. And yes, there's always going to be holes and stuff like that. But it's the companies that are out there using real quantum computing, trying to experiment and seeing how they'll get there. At no point does anybody say, hey, we've reached quantum advantage, because I think we're still far away from that. And we try not to be part of the hype cycle. But unfortunately, with any new technology, there's always going to be people that are going to be pushing that hype cycle, talking about quantum in the wrong way. I mean, Anders, you and I were up on the mountain at Swiss lunch, and I had a guy come up to me and he said, "Oh, I've got a quantum computer. I've got a quantum computer, and we're doing collateral optimization, and we're doing X, Y, and Z." And I knew for a fact what he was telling me just was incredible. But unfortunately, you have other people kind of pushing that. And if you don't know and you're not in the industry, he seemed believable. If I didn't know what I know, I could believe him and say, "Oh, wow, this guy's doing amazing stuff." So you're always going to have people out there probably overselling it, and that's why I keep pushing back on education. if you educate yourself and understand, then you can call this kind of stuff out, and you can try to separate hype versus what's real yourself.
Hmm. And who uses the index, and what what are the people that use it? What are is it for policymakers, corporates, investors? Who is it for, and how do they use it?
Well, I know I've seen a lot of pitch decks, and a lot of pitch decks for companies in quant that are doing quantum hardware and algorithm development are using the index to say, oh, here's some of my clients and here's the stuff that I've done. So the good news is I know it's already in pitch decks. There's a newsletter in the US called The Morning Brew. It's got 4 million subscribers. They called us out here just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, which was pretty cool. Um, and I was with a regulator in Saudi Arabia where they said, yes, I know the index, and I've shown it to a lot of my friends from an investment perspective, because there's a sense that if these companies are the ones looking at the latest technology and working on it, they might think about putting a basket of stocks or an ETF or something around these technologies, because if these guys do really take off and are ahead in this, they would be pretty good investments. And these are all big companies, right? So if you look at the index, all public companies that are publicly traded. So
Yeah, it's good. I think it's a good guidance, and use that as a reference points. Obviously, it's credibility. It looks nice. You have the big players, and then making reference points back to it. That's a good substantial addition to the pitch, of course. So, but where do you see this project or the index going? What's next with the quantum index? You talked about adding new categories. What are other things that you're looking at?
yeah, it's early days. So Anders, we kind of kicked this off. We knew it was very important. We knew it's going to be valuable information. I'm in the process of really looking at the business model and seeing how we can keep expanding not only on industries but also sponsorship. We've captured a lot of very good detailed information as well around use cases, stuff that industry would like to understand. Other companies that want to get onto the index and need support, we want to help support them, to help them drive patents, to help them hire the right people, to write research papers. How do they position their company well so that they can also be seen as leaders in this industry? And the more time that goes on, the more competitive it's going to be, because now people kind of know who's in the lead and kind of who's driving forward. And now it's funny because now a lot of people reach out to me to share with me their successes. So before, I would have to go and find their successes. Now they're purposely sending me successes, which is good for us because now we get to see a view of the industry, and we're very well positioned to see what's going on in automotive, what's going on in life sciences. How are they using this technology in a novel way? And I think that also helps us to be able to serve our clients when we go and do consulting as well. And so it's a combination of things. We are going to be looking at sponsorship and seeing if people want to sponsor industries, sponsor certain specific reports that we put out. So it's a combination of things, Anders. We're still early days. I mean, believe it or not, we only launched our first list last year at Expanse when we were together in Expanse in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's a quick, I mean, but this is also the opportunity that is there. It's an evolving industry. It's a very challenge, very interesting in terms of taking the potential spots in the industry that's going to get filled. So I think that shows that it's a needed platform that also for the quantum economy or for the whole quantum tech industry to have a reference point. So yeah, I'm excited to see how this unfolds. But I mean, you're also very, you mentioned it twice already. You're very driven by educating people in the industry, and you just launched a new course at MIT. And I see that I'm observing academia struggling in some sense to keep up with the speed of the industry. If you look at one side of the coin, you have physicists that are given a lot of funding money to do the exact same that thing that they did within the academia walls, but just with more money and less restrictions on bureaucracy and so on. And kind of sort of I see this path also happening a little bit on the educational side. So there is, direct access, generated content within the industry and large player that have the access. How do you see this? I mean, MIT now sitting in the sweet spot of leadership and technology. Is that what it is? I mean, what is this course about, and how do you see education playing an important role? And maybe also touch upon why it is still important within the quote unquote elite universities that are already there.
Yep. Yep. So, Anders, when I first started into quantum, I went out looking for classes. I went out looking for everything. And I didn't really find, I found specific niches. So there are a lot of vendors out there that'll teach you quantum, but they'll teach you their version of quantum, right? So if I'm a photonics company, I'm going to teach you quantum about photonics. If I'm a control company, I'm going to teach you, quantum kind of from my perspective. And so I noticed that there was a lack of training that went across the board that talked about all the modalities, talked about all of that. And I actually went to MIT and I took the 4 courses that they had at quantum, which was great. But one of the things that I noticed was it got very technical. And it got so technical that I knew that it would be hard to attract people that don't have a lot of time and don't want to get into that much technical, because you don't need to. Not everybody needs to, right? I'm not going to become a quantum physicist, but I needed to learn enough to be able to do strategy, to do the work that I'm doing. And so I saw that there was a hole in the market that was really dedicated to executives. How do I create something, take out the fluff, and give executives precisely kind of what they need, information that can help them be better executives without getting into the maths, without getting into the detail. Now, I give them that option if they want to do that. We've got 4 other courses to do that, but I wanted to give them a short, concise course. You have 6 weeks to do it. And it's a 10-hour course. You don't have to do all 10 hours because a lot of them is optional work and going through every single modality and stuff like that. So you could do it in a lot less time, but it was really meant for executives. Before I started HorizonX, I worked at a big bank and I offered the MIT course to a lot of executives at the bank. And I was giving them the MIT course for free. The course is about $2,500, the one I was giving for free. I thought people would just be, taking it off my hands and say, Steve, I want it. And I worked this deal out with MIT to give this course. We agreed on a deal, and I was going to give it to some very senior executives for free. How many people do you think took me up on the offer, Anders? How many do you think?
No idea.
What do you think? Just give me
if for free and they want to get in quantum and management leadership, they don't have time. So I would say they were a really low number.
0.
Yes.
Nobody took me up. You're absolutely right. You called it right. 0 people, which kind of surprised me, but they were interested. A lot of people were interested. And the reason why was because it was like a 4 to 6 week course. It was 8 hours a week, 6 to 8 hours a week, and it was just too much. And so
the free part is just not commitment. So that, people, at least if they justify an investment, they would have to force themselves through it. So this is always a challenge. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And so what we did was we created a course, cut out all the stuff that people don't really need to know, kind of talk about what is quantum, opportunities and threats. And then they can do this course, get the certificate from MIT, get a good grasp of this technology. And if they want to go deeper, we got 4 other courses to go deeper. And so that's kind of my way of kind of the way I learned it, the way I appreciated it was through education, which is what I want to do is I want to be that front door to executives, board level people, C level to say, I'm going to help teach you in basic English what this technology is about and maybe inspire you to get involved as well.
That's nice. I mean, there are many good educational initiatives, but I think, coming from a content perspective or a rollout perspective, how do you get the attention? The incentive for behavioral change is always the challenge. How do you get people on board to tap in? And that sounds like a good mixture that you have with that course. But is that more of a your access points as a consultant to the industry, or is it also something that you think about in a business sense with MIT to scale as a business model?
No, it's more of well, part of what I try to do, Anders, like yourself, because I know you're a thought leader. You've got a lot of books out there. I'm trying to create that for myself, right? Becoming a thought leader in quantum, and to do that, teaching a strategy portion at MIT as a guest lecturer helps give that credibility. So when people come to me and say, "Okay, well, um, he's doing work with MIT. He's a senior advisor to McKinsey and other companies." That helps kind of give the credibility that I don't have to go out there and try to sell myself as, hey, believe me, I can do this. So I've got the history to do it. So it actually is more of a calling card to help me out. But I enjoy teaching and I enjoy kind of sharing my experiences on how I learned this technology. And that's kind of what I use it for.
Nice, yeah. We spent a lot of time also. I mean, you mentioned Germany at some of the top places in the index, but you spend a lot of times in the UAE, in Dubai, Abu Dhabi. You travel eastwards. How do you see the race? I mean, obviously, US pushing a lot in the quantum computing companies with their heavy investments. You spoke positively about Europe. How do you see it in the UAE, Middle East, Asia? How is it evolving? Who's running the race?
I think what's exciting about the UAE and the GCC area is that they're starting to see they really want to push on innovation. They want to push on latest technology, latest AI. When I ran innovation, it is very resource intensive. You need people and you need money. And right now, this region is investing in people and investing in the money. And so for me to do what I need to do is I needed to position myself somewhere where people are really more investing instead of backtracking. I see in Europe and, when I was in the UK, a lot of consolidating, cost cutting, same thing in the US, obviously, with some of the stuff going on here. But here it's more about, they're thinking about 2030 and they've got a 2030 plan and what can we do and how do we invest? And a lot of push around AI. And a lot of people felt like they missed out on AI. And there was a lot of FOMO that, oh, I wasn't ahead of the game. And those same people now are saying, well, I'm not going to miss the next wave. And they're starting to hear about quantum and they're like, oh, I'm going to get into this quantum wave now. So there are people that are investing. And I think with smart investments, you can get in. And I'm making a bet myself that this region is going to be pushing a lot around research, a lot in the education space. They're getting very involved to see how do they leverage this technology to match their goals. But the other side, Anders, like yourself, is I travel all around the world. So it's not just because I'm here. That's all I do. I've got clients in Latin America, in the US, and in Asia. And so it's a good corridor for me to fly around the world and get things done. Plus, I'm enjoying my time here.
That's something that Timon can relate to. But that then coming back to the educational part, then if the region is investing heavily in innovation, then you have to attract also the talent. So do you also see the research and the academia switching to that region then? Do you see a lot of things happening in that space as well?
Yeah, I think they are. There's a lot of investment from universities. I was in Riyadh last week where the World Economic Forum had an event, and so a lot of universities are getting in. They're working to build curriculum, trying to attract talent. I can tell you the reason I'm in the UAE and I was able to get my golden visa was because they want people that are in the quantum computing field. And that's how I got attracted to come here. And they facilitated my move here. And I've got the golden visa, which, it's 10 years to be able to come in and out. And it's because their commitment to attract talent that has this. And I think, Saudi Arabia is doing the same thing. You see big investment in Qatar. And yeah, no, it's a lot of that's going on. But there's also, maybe to your point, is there's also a shortage, not only in this region, but around the world in quantum computing. And so part of my goal is, how do I help this region really get the skills, get the education, because quantum has the possibility of creating a digital divide of the people that know the technology and the ones that don't. And if I can help out, even in this region, to help deploy that, get that out there, create that awareness, that's the kind of help I'd like to do.
How do you see this phase of development if you compare it to the dot-com 1930,000 and the AI wave? How do you see quantum, both from an opportunity side, but also obviously on the risk side? How does it differ? Do you see similarities? How do you see the development unfolding?
Well, it does have some similarities, because I remember when I was trying to explain the World Wide Web to people and how to go onto an internet browser, and people were like, "What?" I type in www and do what? And people kind of looked at me weird. And I actually had somebody tell me it was a fad. I remember somebody told me that the whole internet is a fad. Um, but no, I think there's a lot of similarities. I think the next Googles of the world, the next Amazons of the world, the next, eBay, all these companies we don't know about, and they're going to come out of the ashes of some of these technologies. That what comes, and so
Let me pause it and challenge you with that.
yeah, yeah.
So when you look at Nvidia or Tesla or Google or in Microsoft and some of these players, is there a point where they get so big that the startup and those, evolving companies that you are envisioning, that they don't even have the capacity to scale because they were going to get swallowed or bought out at an earlier stage, because the race of innovation is so rapid that these companies with the deep pockets would just keep on, integrating, embedding these quote unquote startups into their already existing ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, the startups, if they want to sell, yes, you're absolutely right, that happens. But because these companies are getting so big, I can tell you, and having worked at a big company, making change and getting things done at big companies is very slow. And the good thing that these small companies have is they can be dynamic, they can try different things, they can try different approaches. They don't have the legacy that these big companies have that hold them back. They don't have that investments and all the stuff that these people have to use, that they've created this big capital outlay. So yes, I do worry about these companies just swallowing up all these new technologies, but there's always going to be new things that people are going to come out. And I think some of these small players can actually do some really great stuff. And it's not now, there's a lot of companies coming out being unicorns that have less than 100 people working for them, right? And so the dependency isn't about how many people now I can have. It's really about how efficient and how effective I can be. So you're right, but I think the same thing happened in financial world, right? Because you have these big financial players, and you're thinking, oh, these small fintechs. There's no way a fintech ecosystem could thrive, because you have these huge banks, and these huge banks will just go out there and buy everything. But then you got things like Stripe that comes out of anywhere. You got these small fintechs that, become unicorns and make things happen. I think the same thing's going to happen. in the quantum space. I think we're going to get some players that will come out of nowhere that will have some big impacts.
But then you spoke about the digital divide, and you did the point that you just mentioned as an example was a company worth, billions, or a unicorn that has less than 100 people. You could all even go so far with AI and have a quantum AI to have a singular person creating an agent-driven business that could be a unicorn if you take it to the extreme. Um, are you worried about that digital divide then? I mean, how do you see that? If you zoom out like a decade from now, uh, what do we see?
It is a good point, and I think every time there's always been a new technology, there's always people saying we're going to lose our jobs and we're going to, and I think that's why part of me really pushes on education. Education has always empowered me to actually get in and find other opportunities. I could tell you the quantum index would not have happened if I didn't go to MIT and learn about quantum. Horizon X wouldn't have happened. Some of my opportunities wouldn't have happened. So I could have just stayed and not done anything after I left my banking,
Mhm.
not prepared myself, and these opportunities wouldn't have allowed that for me. So
But isn't that then the true then that you are on the right side of the digital divide, versus the other financial players that stuck within the narrative of having a physical bank and playing with paper with kings and queens and numbers on it? They're not going to be on the right side when history is rewritten. And if you take that further, um, you know, when everyone taps into the educational part, is not necessarily given that we will have all these new jobs and all these new opportunities. If everyone jumps over to the right side of digital, but we keep reducing the amount of people needed on that side, then, at the end of the day, you will need the Messi and Ronaldos of the industries. But what happens with everyone else?
it is scary. Listen, Anders, I've got three boys and I get nervous for my three boys, right? And thinking about their future and thinking, every generation before them always, in most part, did better than the generation before. And I do worry about the next generation and what this really means for the next generation. And so, I wish I had an answer. I mean, there's a lot of issues. I want to play my part, and that's why I want to try to democratize quantum and democratize this. I'm sure I get a lot of negative comments about, oh, Steve, you don't know quantum from a technology perspective or physics perspective, but I'm never that was never my goal, right? My goal was, how do I make this accessible and easy for anybody to get in and get involved? Like, I don't know exactly how my iPhone and all the circuits work in my iPhone, but I know how to get value out of my iPhone and get what I need. And so that's what I'm trying to convey. So, Anders, it's a good question. I wish I had an answer. It does worry me because, like I said, I got three boys of my own that I want to help navigate and gear through the future. And I think, I, I have faith that once those bridges get there, we got to help out. But part of my problem, my part is, whoever wants to learn quantum, I want to help them teach that.
No, that's good. I mean, I think that's the value system that you also believe in progress as a topic, but also to that point, if you look at, if we could think about and just play with it and say, okay, where is the value creation? So I've been pondering this development of edge computing. When you look at AI today, if you play with the video generation or the imaging, and how that has, progressed over the past 6 to 12 months. You can always argue there will be stagnation or something will happen, but more likely seems the path of progress. And if you project that into the future, be it 5, 10, 15 years, most of the content that we have will simply be real time generated. You'll watch AI on device. You don't need apps. You don't need operating systems. Last night, I was just listening to this, this AI generated jazz music of Eminem and 50 Cent. And it's like the voice is just insane. And it's just like, and we are literally just months in. So where do you think the value creation will come from? Because a lot of the scenarios we're using quantum are optimization. Optimization is an efficiency game. At the end of the day, we will not need human beings and it will be a market economy. So if I figure out how to do it with 50% margin, the next one will come at 40, 30, 20, 10, and so on. So it's a market economy, a capitalistic drive that just speeds up. So where do you see scenarios of value creation that looks promising to you right now?
Well, I'll give you one example that I really like is, and I heard a stat, and I've looked it up before, that we use 1.5, 1.2% of the world's energy to create ammonia. And we create ammonia because that creates fertilizer. Fertilizer creates food. And the only reason we spend so much energy doing that is because we don't understand how nature does it naturally. And so if we can use this technology to simulate that chemical reaction and lessen the need for that technology to be able to do that, that could have a significant impact not only on energy, on waste, but also on food production. Things like coming up with new batteries, longer batteries, more power. You talked about, optimization. And so I think looking at it and how does it apply for good? And part of it is I want to make sure that the technology and everything we're doing, it is applied for good things. It's not just for, hey, how do I, make more money from it? Or how do I do it? How do I make the human experience better, leveraging this technology? Go back to cleaner air, cleaner water. One of my clients actually last night asked me, Steve, can we come up with, it was a family office. I want to invest in quantum for people that are solving things that are actually going to impact water. And so, finding different things on, how do you do that? Carbon capture, that kind of stuff. The reality is, I think as the computers get better and people become creative on how they can apply this, there's going to be a lot of benefit. I also look at pharmaceuticals, right? And so how do we come up with pharmaceuticals that match your DNA, because your DNA has been sequenced, and we'll already know if something will have negative side effects for you. And so hopefully we will be able to prescribe things to you that will benefit you instead of, giving you all these side effects. This is me thinking of the good side of it. Obviously, there's the negative side or the threats when it comes to cryptography. But then there's also, you could use it to protect cryptography as well. So, I hope I've answered your question, Anders. It's just,
yeah, sure. No, I just like to play with it, and I actually think that the business case of cryptography that is heavily used in quantum, I think that's a very trivial challenge. I mean, there are implications of bitcoins, or that you have to think about merging or forking it, and there are technical implications. But at the end of the day, blockchain, post-quantum cryptography, QKD, whatever, it's just going to be a part of cybersecurity. And I think that's an upgrade. That's a good commercial take, but I'm not so worried about that. There will always be those challenges that eventually you have to have on. The war against war is a escalation into a stalemate where it makes no sense to go to war because everyone's right. I think that's the only, that no boots on the ground. You see it in the Ukraine right now. It's just a technology race. I mean, it's just drones, and then it's going to be software, and it's just going to cascade. And but what I think about is, I think we're not we talk too much about transformation and simulation, if you like. You talked about DNA sequencing, right? I think what is required is a re-enlightenment or some Renaissance thinking, a revolution of thinking as such. Because I think that 10, 12 years from now, energy will be capex and not opex. It will be investment spending on a baseline, and the first industrial nations that can offer free energy are the most competitive. So energy will be free. I mean, at the marginal cost of energy will be zero. That I think. Why? Because you'll have batteries that are better. You mentioned that you will have new elements in the periodic system that has evolved. We will have different ways to do things. I mean, all the second generation batteries of EV, look at my home country, Norway. There's a million EVs running, right? The battery will still be at 80% at 10 years from now, right? And they are batteries, they're old technology. So if you take that a little bit further, it's inevitable. And then how is society operating then? When you look at food supply, if we change food and flip it over and said, what do we do when we eat? We charge our body. It's just energy and carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So the whole essence of eating supplements, it's actually upside down. So supplements, it's what you do when you go out and sit with your friends and drink wine and have the shabam, because the nutrition that we get from food is bad anyways, because we have, disrupted the soil. So why talk about food? We should talk about charging. So first we take some micronutritions or some, injections or some energy or some biological substrates that charges our body. And then we can go out and do the whole shabam. So I think there's the radical development of technology forces us to think very differently about how we perceive reality. And I think when we talk about simulation, it's very easy to say that as a word, but what if we would understand it at the foundational level? So we would do a DNA sequencing. I just had a guy on my podcast that I'm also very much cheering on, and he's building them a 3D DNA sequencer. And basically what you're doing in a quantum physical sense, you are taking the observer into being a part of the experiment. So you're not measuring and observing, you are writing. So if you can write into the code of life, the DNA itself, you are taking over evolution, right? So if you start to understand these things at the first principle level, how do you distinguish, right? That's the big question. So we talk about digital twins and all the advantages, but what if you would understand one cell, first principle, right? What prohibits you to understand all cells? It's a computational scale effect. If you understand the function of a neuron, right, at a quantum level or at the biology, at the fundamental first principle level, is there something that prohibits you to understand 83 billion neurons, right? And if you do so, does that then give rise to consciousness? So I think we are confronted with a complete change in thinking that forces us to rethink life and consciousness and experience altogether. And from there, we need to kind of sort of backtrack into what kind of future do we want to build. So I'm a possibilist by nature, optimistic because I like positivism, but I'm not a naive optimist. But I generally think that it will be less about what we can do in future and more about what we should do. So we are in a position where we are writing our own destiny, which require a completely different way of thinking at the on how we perceive the world. So I'm probably more radical, technologically driven than most are, and still I think I'm boring in my sense of reflecting on these topics because we're seeing it happen, right? And I think it's much more impactful. So the thought you had on that, digital divide, that becomes very, very fundamental, I think, when we build these technologies.
Absolutely. And I think it goes back, and I think what you're saying is exactly what I'm trying to say, is it's the creativity of humanity that's going to be leveraging this technology, that's going to come up with stuff that you and I would not even dream of, and how you could leverage this technology.
But isn't it also the creativity of, we don't even have to have them sentience, but if you would have whatever you want to define an AGI, I think 2026 will be like literally the first year where AI comes up with something really new. So, I mean, outside of data optimization within the boundaries that we have right now. And that, if you could extend the periodic system or these type of things that might come out of an agent that challenges itself. Human creativity, it's wonderful, but we have created something or seem to be creating something where we take out the divine creationism and put it in some kind of humane creationalism where we are creating gods, so to speak. And why shouldn't they challenge themselves with the technology that we
Oh,
have?
without a doubt, without a doubt. And keep in mind, like when you're using nature, the operating system of nature, that is kind of what we're doing is we're leveraging creation. And so I think to your earlier point, getting people that are going to do this ethically and understand that and work through that, I think is important. That's why there's so many different components of different people that need to get into this industry, policymakers, ethics and stuff. And so we're all kind of doing our little piece from different angles. But we need like the smart people that can actually put all that structure around it. And I'm with you. I'm an optimist and I'm always looking about what this is going to do and amazing stuff. But we need also those people that are going to tell us, hey, watch out, be careful of this, because technology is not bad or good. It's kind of the use of it that really makes it bad or good.
Well, we've been saying that for so many years, but if there is no perception more of what is good and bad, then we have a challenge, right? So I think it's good that you're contributing with your small little humble piece to Steve. Like myself, I'm just trying to figure this out, and I think it's an amazing time to be alive. For what it's worth, and I think there are possible many. I like the term possibilism because that's what you can achieve, and if we put our minds to it, we do it, we get it right. At the same time, if we would have an AGI, most likely the singularity moment would come much faster because it would just cascade. So it seems like we're in a hurry to figure out how to do it. And it seems also kind of sort of seems like we have like a one shot to get it right. Because once it's beyond our comprehensive, small, humble little monkey brains, it's kind of difficult to reverse and to reverse it, right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
we definitely have to get it right.
Yeah, no, that's good. But thank you so much for doing this, Tim. I really loved learning more about the index and your great educational initiatives with MIT, your drive doing this globally, picking up vibes and innovation and creation from every corner of the world. And with your spirit of positivism doing so. So I look forward to seeing you in a physical space in near future. And again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Anders. Thanks for having me on.